We'll have an update on the infant death in Lamoni tonight at 10.
Good evening, I'm Hugh Downs.
And I'm Barbara Walters, and this is 2020.
On the ABC News Magazine, 2020, with Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters.
Tonight, men, women, and sex. AIDS is changing the way the game is played.
I'll do a lot for love, but I'm not ready to die for it.
Experts say an alternative is safe sex.
That's why guys gotta wear condoms, and girls gotta make sure guys wear them.
Safe sex, a battle cry for the AIDS generation, and more than just using condoms. Lynn Shure with what you need to know now that sex can kill you.
And the day New York stood still, a huge crane had toppled over.
Authorities report at least one person trapped under a piece of equipment at the site.
Incredibly, under the weight of 35 tons, a woman was found alive.
When I first saw her, in my own mind, I said, there's no way she's going to survive.
She bid her kids farewell and then waited for death. Tonight, Barbara tells how she cheated it. A moment of crisis. The woman under the crane.
Watch closely. You might see your favorite TV weatherman. It's how David Letterman got his start.
Well, let's take a look at the weather situation here in the state of Indiana.
Nice work if you can get it. So how do you? Hugh takes you inside the world of TV weather stars. It's not as easy as it looks. And now the weather.
For the fourth straight year, Volkswagen is the best-selling European car line in the U.S. The Volkswagen Golf is the best-selling car in all of Europe. And the Volkswagen Jetta is the best-selling European nameplate in the U.S. When you're hot, you're hot. That's why it's possible for your participating dealer to give you air conditioning at no extra charge. A savings of $740 on select Golf GLs and Jettas. See your Volkswagen dealer soon. Otherwise, you could be left out in the cold.
This is Midtown Manhattan, the heart of New York City. And on any given workday, it's wall-to-wall people, crowded sidewalks literally overflowing, and bumper-to-bumper traffic. Now, can you imagine a gigantic construction crane tipping over on all that? Well, it happened. No one was killed, but when the dust settled, one woman was trapped and only inches from death.
And Hugh, what an unusual woman she is. At the time, her bravery captivated this entire city. Everyone asking, can they get her out in time? Tonight, in a moment of crisis report, you'll see how that woman, and she's one of the most remarkable women I've ever met, you'll see how she survived. They have become a familiar sight in New York and other big cities. Construction cranes. As many as 200 cranes are operating on any given workday in New York, adding to the already congested streets and sidewalks. New Yorkers seem to take it in stride, though, weaving their way in and out of the maze of detours designed for protection from the potential dangers around them. But one day, late in the spring of 1985, a construction crane similar to this one was lifting some steel in Midtown Manhattan when it accidentally toppled over. And it set into motion a dramatic rescue operation which would virtually bring the city of New York to a halt, out of concern for one woman helplessly trapped beneath it.
This just into the WINS newsroom. A construction crane is overturned on East 63rd Street at 3rd Avenue. Authorities report at least one person trapped under a piece of equipment at the site. Details remain sketchy.
It was like a huge earthquake.
I ran across the street to see what happened, and I saw legs sticking out from underneath the crane.
So I immediately ran to the telephone and dialed 911 and asked for emergency, police, ambulance, everyone.
The police dispatcher reported that his board lit up. That's not a false alarm. That's real.
When we got there, the street was in chaos.
Many emergency vehicles here.
Precinct cops were doing the best they could to maintain control.
As we turned into 3rd Avenue, we see this massive piece of machinery upside down, teetering on the brink of a large hole.
The crane has flipped down into the construction site. It's an excavator.
This woman's in trouble. This woman is really in trouble.
Service unit truck in here.
How in the world are they going to get her from underneath this crane?
Apparently there is a person trapped beneath the crane.
So began the 6-hour ordeal for 49-year-old Bridget Gurney, whom you could just barely see here, pinned by her legs beneath this 35-ton crane. Up in the street, hundreds of police officers, firefighters, and medics who rushed to the scene were just beginning to try and figure out how to free her. The day of horror began so innocently for Birgit Gurney.
It was a beautiful early summer day. I was going out in a light silk dress, and a blazer, and no stockings first day, and it was just so lovely. And I went to the dentist. And when I came out of the dentist an hour later, and I started to walk, and I walked into this accident.
You saw a crane?
Oh, no,
construction.
I didn't.
You just were walking?
Just walking, and I saw the construction side, but it looked very simple. Quite far down was an opening where people stood and looked down into the construction. I thought, shall I stop too or just walk by? And I decided to walk by, and that minute I heard, get out of the way, the crane is toppling over. And I remember my bag flying away, and everybody was shouting, and but it was seconds. And it went da, da, bum, bum, and the crane was on me, finished. And touching this, I knew nobody can lift it, nobody can move it.
But lifting the crane was only part of the problem. Because it had fallen only part of the way into the construction pit below, it was suspended precariously on the edge of the foundation wall. One wrong move from anyone in the rescue party could send it hurtling over the edge, killing her instantly. It was a risk they would have to take in order to save her life.
When I first saw her, in my own mind, I said, there's no way she's going to survive. We climbed out onto the boom, and then underneath the boom, and then underneath the crane.
Officer Paul Raganese and his partner, Tony Mandrasina, of the Emergency Services Unit, were able to squeeze themselves into the tiny space beneath the crane and finally reach Mrs. Gurney. They were soon joined by paramedic Terry Smith of the Emergency Medical Service, who, with a rope tied to his waist, carefully stepped onto the piece of plywood that was once part of the wall, but was now serving as a bridge to reach Mrs. Gurney. When he finally made it underneath, he was amazed to discover that not only was she conscious and talking, but appeared quite calm.
That was unbelievable. Here's this woman, she's not screaming, she's not panicking. And I just felt, is there a possibility? And if there is, I'm going to do everything in my power to give her that chance.
Immediately, Smith went to work, setting up an IV and checking her vital signs. Remarkably, she was more concerned with his safety than her own.
She told both me and the officer that you might as well get out of here, I'm going to die.
Smith climbed back up to the street to report on her medical condition. Her legs were badly crushed, and she would need morphine to help ease the pain. Underneath the crane, Raganese and his partner began their job of trying to comfort Gurney and prevent her from going into shock. The policeman, Paul Raganese, was able to get to you in that little opening. What did it mean to have him there with you?
It was just nice not to be all alone. And he told me right away, talk to me and squeeze my hand. And keep squeezing my hand.
Human contact plays a lot in survival. You realize that you're still alive, and that contact by holding hands or talking keeps people from giving up. And I realized that she was a fighter.
What Raganese could not possibly have known as he crouched there beside her, clutching her hand, was how much of a fighter Birgit Gurney really was. In fact, her courage had been tested many times before this in a life filled with misfortunes. Birgit Gurney, a native of Liechtenstein, came to this country in 1966, newly married to her husband, Arkady. Tragedy struck early in their married life when their first son accidentally drowned. He was only 18 months old. They had 2 more children, a daughter and another son. In 1980, Birgit developed a cancerous lung tumor, which was successfully removed that same year. And then in 1982, in a family skiing trip in Switzerland, a cable car she was riding in crashed to the ground. She suffered severe neck and back injuries and spent 3 months in a hospital. A year later, in 1983, her husband, Arkady, after a long and difficult battle, died of cancer. She was left alone to raise their 2 children, Nina and Arkady Jr. Her life was just beginning to return to normal on that beautiful day in May.
I knew in a way at this time that I'm going to die any minute. And I thought, what can I do? I was very sad, just sad to leave the children.
She said to me, I have some things I want you to tell my children. She says, I don't think I'm going to survive, and I want you to make sure that you bring a message to my children.
I was picked up by a police car, and then we were driven to my brother's school, and we picked him up.
Brigitte's two children, Nina 15 and Arkady Jr. 12, were at school when the accident occurred. Do you remember how you were first told about Mother's accident?
When they picked me up, they just said, there's a crane accident, and I had no idea sort of what happened. I thought like maybe a crane fell and the rock hit her from like the debris or something. I mean, I didn't think anybody could survive like a crane on themselves.
What messages did you give about your children?
My son had a very difficult time losing his father. He felt he was the only boy who didn't have a father. And I thought if he goes through this now again, he can't be. It can't be. So I just wanted him to know, because I thought it's so desperate. I knew I was dying. I knew I wouldn't be there. So I just said, what could I tell them? And I told them that they should always remember that their mother loved them dearly. They loved them very much, and they should never forget that. And wherever they are in life, they should carry that love with them, and then they would be fine.
After the message about her children, she asked for a priest who was brought to the scene. But due to where she was pinned, the priest couldn't reach her. Her last rites were administered through Raganese.
When she received the Holy Communion, I could see on her face she became contented. She seemed in her mind to say, okay, all my business is taken care of, my children will be taken care of, I settled myself with God, now whatever happens, happens.
And I got calm, I think, because it was a very real moment of the end is coming. This is it.
As the rescue attempt continued throughout the afternoon, hundreds of onlookers gathered on the street.
3rd Avenue was still a mess because of that crane accident.
The entire east side of Manhattan was slowly grinding to a halt.
All bumper to bumper from the lower 40s to the mid-70s.
Meanwhile, initial attempts to lift the toppled crane with two small cranes were unsuccessful, so a much larger crane would have to be called in. It was also learned at this time that the toppled crane was operating without proper permits. New York's Mayor Koch, who was on the scene, reacted to the news.
How can a crane of that size be operating on a sidewalk of New York day after day with no permits?
That is not what I am concerned about at the moment. My concern relates to that poor woman.
It was around 2:30. Paul Raganese and his partner, Tony Mendocina, after being crouched in this position for nearly the entire time, were overcome by heat exhaustion and severe muscle cramps. They were finally forced to leave Brigitte Gurney's side.
When they started to pull me up, the look in her eye is something I never forget. She thought that they were pulling the cops out maybe because it was getting too dangerous, and we had broken that contact.
With Raganese in an ambulance recovering from leg spasms, a second team of officers, Ron Herod and Alex Torreira, were sent in to replace him. It was now 4 p.m., approximately 4 hours into the rescue operation. The larger crane finally arrived at the scene, but the decision was made that lifting the toppled crane was too dangerous. The slightest shift in either direction would cause certain death. Instead, a new plan was devised to stabilize the crane from above and below and dig Gurney out from beneath it. Remarkably, she was conscious and alert throughout the entire ordeal. Ironically, the crane, which was pinning her legs, was now acting as a tourniquet, preventing her from bleeding to death. The real danger, as paramedic Art Romano explained, would be when that pressure was removed.
All of a sudden, the bleeding starts again, the blood rushes back to the lower extremities, and the person goes into profound shock.
Did you realize that that was your most dangerous time?
Yes. They said, when you get her out, hand her out fast, otherwise we're going to lose her. I didn't want to know anymore. When it came to that point, I thought, I either wake up or I'll be gone.
Really, just pull it around. Body, just pull it around. Pull it around. Right there, we got her.
moment that Bridget was handed over to us and we put her down on the sidewalk, her blood pressure dropped, her eyes rolled back in her head, and she lost all consciousness. At that moment, I was really afraid. I was afraid we were going to lose her. Intravenous fluids were started over again. We opened up her airway to have her breathe easier. And in a matter of a few minutes, we were able to put her into the ambulance and start her on her way to Bellevue.
The ambulance with the police escort headed down 3rd Avenue toward Bellevue Hospital, where a team of surgeons stood by. The entire mile-and-a-half route had been cleared by the police to speed their trip to the hospital. One crisis had finally come to an end. Another was about to begin.
In the emergency room, I actually had her sign for amputation of both legs.
Dr. Daniel Baker was one of the head surgeons who operated on Mrs. Gurney. What was the condition of Mrs. Gurney's legs when she got to the hospital?
Both legs were severely crushed below the knee, with massive damage to the muscle and the skin as well as the bones.
Behind you are Mrs. Gurney's x-rays. Can you tell us what we're looking at?
This x-ray was taken shortly after the operation, where you see these metal rods with pins going into the bone, and you see how the bones have been realigned.
The operation to save Mrs. Gurney's legs was a success. The medical team was hailed as heroes on the front page of the newspapers. Mrs. Gurney was visited in the hospital by members of the rescue party who called her one of the most courageous women they had ever met. Then an unexpected phone call came from the White House.
And they said the President of the United States is calling. And I said, why is he calling? So he wants to talk to you. I said, but all I did was fall into a hole. So everyone laughed. I guess I was very overwhelmed. It was lovely. It was wonderful for my son. It gave him a great lift. It was just, he just thought, oh, it's wonderful that the President of the United States calls his mother.
It was amazing since she she didn't remember a thing, and she just talked so well on the phone.
What she said?
And he said, I hope you're feeling better or something. And she'd reply, you have a great country, and you have great policemen here, and saved my life and everything.
Mrs. Gurney had 3 operations that first week. Her suffering was intense, at times almost unbearable.
Every 4 hours was the cleaning of the pins, which could be excruciating. At one point, I said, don't touch me anymore. I don't care what happens to my legs. I don't want to be touched one more time. And that was, I'm sure, a month later. And the whole time in the hospital, the 6 weeks, I never had a feeling of, thanks God, I'm alive. I was so disappointed that I was in a mess again, and that the family was in such a mess.
What was the toughest part of it for you, Akadi?
Like the first 3 or 4 nights, and I go to bed and I say, this isn't fair. It's not fair. You know, she, father, and she had that cable car accident. Just thought it wasn't fair.
Mrs. Gurney, so many things have happened to you in your life. This is not the first terrible thing to have happened.
Not really. This one was very strong, this accident, and I think there was a purpose in it somehow. Otherwise it would make you crazy.
What purpose?
That many people who are in desperate situations, if they have some ideals and some beliefs, they can fight it and they can get through it. To show maybe people who are weaker that you can do it.
This was Bridget Gurney last fall, now after 7 operations. She walks with a cane and wears a brace on one leg. She still goes to therapy 3 times a week, and doctors say that her walking will never be 100% normal and that she will still need more surgery. What are you looking forward to now?
I still have a job to do. I still want to walk much better. I want to be without these braces. And then I would like to do a few nice things. We drove last night. It was pitch dark. Couldn't find
She had an opportunity to do one of those nice things this past fall when she attended a parents' weekend at her daughter's school in upstate New York.
I got better than me, obviously. He always says. I got 4.
Bridget believes that she has become stronger through each ordeal she has faced. She feels that the crane that nearly crushed out her life also gave it new meaning, renewing her optimism, her faith, and her connection to her family. And what about the construction site where all of this began? Well, it's now a 42-story luxury condominium called the Royale. And if you look just below the name, you will see the theme of the building, which ironically also serves as a reminder of that incredible day when the city of New York shut down to save one life. The building's theme, remembrance of things past. We had hoped that this story would have a happy ending, but there is instead a tragic postscript. Bridget Gurney had begun to pick up the pieces of her life and had become very close to a Dr. Peter Rizzo, an orthopedic surgeon in New York. Her friends hoped that the relationship would lead to marriage. But last Thursday, just 1 week ago, Dr. Rizzo was shot in the head by a man with a history of mental problems. The doctor lapsed into a coma and died the next day. Sometimes there are things we just can't understand. We would like to offer Mrs. Gurney our deepest sympathy.
I'd like to echo that sympathy and also hope that fate has now finished testing Miss Gurney. Thank you, Barbara. Well, later in the program, some are calling it the second sexual revolution. New attitudes because of AIDS. Lynn Scher with the rules for safe sex, now that sex can kill you. But next, I'll take you down through the years with TV's weather stars. And we've got some surprises for you right after this.
This Maytag warehouse gives me the shivers. Loneliness to the left of me, loneliness to the right of me. I'm surrounded by loneliness. Look at you Maytag washers built to last longer, need fewer repairs. Thanks for nothing. And you Maytag dryers. I have a hunch you got it in for me too. And the same for you Maytag dishwashers and ranges. Have a heart, huh guys?
Not all Maytag repairmen are this lonely, but we're trying. Maytag. The dependability people.
This is the beginning. The all-new Chrysler LeBaron. Beauty with a passion for driving. Advanced front-wheel drive traction. Positive response suspension. Fuel-injected high-torque power. Choose Precision 5-speed. Heart-pounding turbo. All with Chrysler's new 770 protection plan. New LeBaron from Chrysler. Driving to be the best.
Before you zip it up or pull it up, before you dress, caress. Caress with bath oil leaves your skin softer than soap can, softer than anything that touches it. Before you dress, caress.
Breakfast in bed? Okay, what's the catch?
Just thought you'd enjoy the rich, buttery taste of shed spread country crock.
An offer I can't refuse.
One taste of country crock and she melts like butter.
Try rich, buttery shed spread country crock with fewer calories than regular margarine and no cholesterol.
A-doo-dah, well, the boy genius. You trying to find out why Kentucky Fried Chicken is America's favorite chicken? Then pay attention, son. Folks just love going to the Colonel's because no one else makes chicken with that special blend of 11 herbs and spices. Any that's getting through to you, son? And of course, no one else's chicken is finger-licking good because nobody else knows the Colonel's secret formula. The secret formula! It's too smart for his own good. Kentucky Fried Chicken, we do chicken right.
There are rare moments when a motion picture goes beyond mere entertainment to touch something special in the audience, goes beyond the passions of the headlines to become a part of our lives, a testament to the best in us all. America is such a motion picture. Witness the victory of the human spirit, the victory of America, Sunday.
In the early days of television, I had the chance to do just about everything, from announcing, hosting, reporting, commentary, everything, except I never was a television weather person. And I think I figured out why recently. I wasn't pretty enough. Television has grown up over the years, and now to be a TV weather forecaster, you don't need to be a pretty face. You need personality. And if you just happen to be a meteorologist also, nobody's going to hold that against you.
Up on One Music.
They're presented as part of a news package, but actually they can be the biggest star of the team as they tout their credentials.
Meteorologist Don Novak has earned the American Meteorological Society seal of approval.
Go for the joke.
1,000. Ought to be finished by now. We can fry an egg in Tiger Stadium.
Or the outlandish.
6 in Columbia.
But eventually they all get down to business.
It is, just east of Boston, with snow to the west of
the strength of a forecaster's appeal can help make a station number one in local news.
Research has shown that the two areas in local news that most interest the audience are medical news and the weather. They want to know how to dress for work the next day, how to dress their children, and how to plan for their weekends.
Talent agents such as Carol Cooper are sought out by stations because finding the right weather person is so important to them.
I think there are three things that you have to consider in weather. One is humor, one is warmth, and one is knowledge. And there's always going to be one of those three things that will be outstanding. The very warm person is your next door neighbor, the guy you trust, the guy you like, and he might have a little humor, but his warmth is the key. The meteorologist, on the other hand, particularly in cold climates or severe weather or farm areas where weather is real important, you might have a more serious meteorologist who will rely very little on humor.
Here in Los Angeles, where the average yearly temperature is 75 degrees and the rainfall just over 14 inches, there isn't a whole lot to be said about the weather. But while the climate is temperate, a TV weather person has to be hot, because the annual worth of each rating point on the early news is just under $2 million.
KABC TV, Los Angeles.
With so much at stake, the emphasis at the top three stations here is on personality, not meteorology. KNBC has a resident comedian, Fritz Coleman. At KCBS, Kevin O'Connell is your friendly next-door neighbor.
I have to tell you, in over 30 years, Minnie, you look younger than ever.
And the venerable institution of LA weather is Dr. George, a former science teacher. His PhD is honorary, but his knowledge is hard-earned.
10% chance of light show. 10%? You know what that means? 90%, no rain at all. All right.
His combination of humor, warmth, and knowledge has made him the area's leading weather personality.
I am trying to convey information. You know who it affects the most, of course? Construction people, truck drivers, working people who have to work out in the weather, and they, to me, are the most serious viewers of all. And I live in fear of giving out misinformation. I still want to be El Professor, the fellow who has the information and knows how to communicate one-on-one and present that information to them.
Along the Pacific coast, it's I can't see.
In the high-tech world of TV weather graphics, you have to learn to talk to a blank wall in order to communicate that information to an audience. One of the few trade schools with sophisticated equipment, the Specs Howard School of Broadcasting in Detroit, teaches this technique. Students are taught how to watch a monitor with a reverse mirror image of themselves projected over a map.
Here in Michigan, we have a...
Where do you go to get out of there? They must train the left hand to know what the right hand is doing, and at the same time ad-lib the information from the National Weather Service. Plus, they are supposed to make it look easy.
And now I'd like to take a look at the Michigan map, if I can. There we are, and I'm right in the middle of the whole state.
It wasn't always so complicated.
Hi there, how are you? Been waiting all day to see you.
In the early 50s, weather reports were separate 5-minute shows within the newscasts and gold mines for advertisers. Sex appeal found a home in the Weather Corner. The marriage of show business to science had begun. Carol Reed was one of the first weather girls. The forecast was committed to memory except for the readings. Little red markings that couldn't be seen on the black and white sets at home were chalked over during the broadcast. As long as the sales curves remained, so did the weather girls.
Good night, and have a happy.
The weather set soon became the new Schwab's drugstore, the place to be discovered. Raquel Welch, 1960 in San Diego. Diane Sawyer, 1967 in Louisville, Kentucky. And Mary Fran, who now stars opposite Bob Newhart, got what she calls her first acting job in 1963 in St. Louis.
The only requisite you had to have to be a weather girl was to absolutely know nothing about the weather and be blonde. I used to race outside and look at the weather and race back in.
And then...
And we would be going on the air live and they would be counting it down. 5, 4, 3. I would zoom in and I would say, folks, it's raining. What can I tell you?
Since the era of the weather girls, Shirley Barish has matched the right person to the right station.
Yeah, in 25 years, you've represented a lot of people. I understand even Pat Sajak's tape came across your desk.
Oh, yes, and unfortunately, I couldn't get him arrested.
High pressure will hold, and we can...
Starting with the host of the Wheel of Fortune, we asked Shirley to use her expertise and look at tapes that we brought her of some very familiar faces.
And this is his gimmick.
Hello. How are you? Nice to see you. Realize under the laws of Tennessee, we are now legally married, young lady.
If I had had this tape, I would have found him probably more placeable than with the tape I had.
So now, Suzanne Summers.
That's very
This, of course, was an audition tape.
The warmest part of the country today was Miami Beach, Florida, with suntan temperatures of 96 degrees. That's really hot.
Unfortunately, I would probably write her a sorry letter and tell her to go to a small market and get a couple of years under her belt and then send me another tape.
You're not going to believe this. David Letterman.
Well, let's take a look at the weather situation here in the state of Indiana. Nothing is going to happen to us as far as weather is concerned. It's going to be just like it was yesterday and just like...
Oh, I like his presentation a lot.
Tomorrow and again on Tuesday because nothing's going on. You look at him.
He's telling you there's nothing happening in the weather scene and why bother to do it. And I love it.
And I think you'll see that once again we've fallen to the prey of political dirty dealings. And right now you can see what I'm talking about. The higher-ups have removed the border between Indiana and Ohio, making it one giant state. Personally, I'm against it.
Oh, I love it.
One giant state.
I wish he'd have stayed in weather.
If he had, maybe he'd be doing the Today Show. But they found another unique talent, Willard Scott.
We all will be someday. Next seat chill, 32 degrees. This is for tomorrow.
I'm not a weather person. I'm not a meteorologist. I'm really almost hardly a weather reporter. I'm a performer. I'm an entertainer. I'm a public relations man. And I've never made any bones about that. One of the things I think the Weather Service has always loved and adored me for is I give them credit for everything.
The Weather Service. There wouldn't be a TV forecast without it.
I think what we're looking at here is another storm coming through the Northeast now.
How the National Weather Service in Washington makes its predictions is based on a recipe that's part science,
500 millibar heights are rising in that
part
area.
interpretation.
So I think we should bring the snow area further south. How about through northern Pennsylvania?
And a little guesswork.
What about New York City?
New York City be touchy. The thickness is might be too warm this time along the coast, and
we'll put a borderline right through the northern suburbs.
That ridge is...
If you were to sit at home, flip the channels, and check the different weather reports, you would often find the same predictions. That's because everyone starts from the same base of information, the National Weather Service. That base of information is taken one step further in Minneapolis-St. Paul, where each of the top 3 stations has its own staff of meteorologists. It's a TV weather war fought with credentials and technology because weather here is serious business. Folks face 50 days a year of life-threatening conditions.
We can show off all of the gadgets and gadgets that we have and give the best forecast that's possible.
Those gadgets and gadgets make KSTP the biggest spender, with $1 million in equipment, an investment that rivals had to counter. TV station KARE bought $500,000 worth and hired meteorologist Paul Douglas. But even here, for all the emphasis on science and technology, showbiz is part of the forecast. Douglas calls this the backyard.
The backyard is an attempt to have the weatherman out in the weather where he belongs, the weather he predicted or did not predict.
And it still helps to get lucky. This past summer, when a small tornado hit the northern suburbs, KARE saw it first. But it wasn't their investment paying off. The twister was spotted from their traffic helicopter.
We're about 3/4 of a mile from the actual touchdown at this time. This is really spectacular.
In fact, none of the local TV meteorologists saw the tornado on their radar. Why? It struck minutes before airtime, and no one was watching the scopes. So if the story behind the TV forecasts is communicating, part science, part interpretation, and a measure of luck, how do we decide which weather person is best? Well, experts tell us that it all comes down to this. The one you like is the one you trust.
Right now in New York, everyone, it's snowing. It's interesting, Hugh, as you point out, there was a time when it was almost all women. Then it seemed so frivolous to be doing the weather that women backed away, and the men who treat it more seriously, had the opportunity to, came in.
That's beginning to change now because there are good women meteorologists, and I think we're going to see a more even mix. Not right now, it's about 10% are women, but I think we're going to see more of them again.
They won't be called weather girls.
They won't be weather girls. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun. I think you're pretty enough to do.
Thank you.
Well, a very different subject now. Sex and AIDS, condoms and controversy. Medical experts want everyone told about safe sex. Do you know what it is? Lynn Shure reports, now that sex can kill you.
Of all the movies you can see this year, see Platoon, nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture of the Year, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and 2 nominations for Best Supporting Actor. See the first real movie about the war in Vietnam, the movie all America is talking about. Platoon, rated R. Now playing at a theater near you. Check newspapers for times.
Mike Doyle's coming on the noontime train. Need deputies, fast. Can't offer you much, just my thanks and a 10-star.
That ain't gonna do it, Marshal.
Okay, how about if I throw in some smooth, creamy Jell-O instant pudding?
Can you have it ready in 5 minutes?
Jell-O instant pudding, regular and sugar-free. Moms love it because it's made with milk. Kids just love it.
I always wanted to be a lawman.
Take the Legs Sheer Elegance Touch Test and feel the difference. This feels coarse. So silky. That's the silky difference of Legs Sheer Elegance.
In silky support and control top 2.
In Deutschland haben wir ein Wort für das Gefühl, einen Volkswagen Golf GT zu fahren. Yahoo!
Something on your mind? Like Valentine's Day? How about diamond? Let's make that diamonds.
Where'd you get it?
The very affordable Valentine collection.
5 letters beginning with Z.
Zales 14-karat gold and diamond jewelry, $69.99 to $100.99.
Whose turn?
Mine.
Sex and AIDS. Because they go together, medical experts are preaching safe sex. What is it? Who needs to practice it? Lynn Shure with information we all need to know now that sex can kill you. When 2020 continues.
Saturday on The Health Show with Kathleen Sullivan. How other people's smoking could endanger you. A substance in sharks that may inhibit cancer. And Dr. Tim Johnson on fighting osteoporosis with calcium. The Health Show, Saturday at 12:30, 11:30 Central and Pacific.
George Wiley, 5 TV News. Authorities in Lamoni tonight continue to investigate the death of a newborn baby. The baby's body was found on the campus of Graceland College yesterday. Authorities say so far no charges have been filed against the mother. Iowa and 8 other states are spending $10,000 each to look into the possibility of a multi-state lotto game. Some say the jackpot could amount to $10 million a week. Now this.
Why do we have to wear what's being worn in America?
Citizens of Leningrad critique America. Final show from Russia.
Friday mornings at 9 on 5 TV.
It's National Burn Week tonight at 10. 5 TV's Jeff Nowakowski will tell us about it on the Segment 5 Health Report. Details at 10.
It's a
better time to buy or lease a new Buick at your Central Iowa Buick dealers. For a limited time, get up to $1,200 cash back on options. Use the cash for your down payment, apply it against your lease, or take it home. It's your choice. And now get a 6-year or 60,000-mile limited warranty and 6-year or 100,000-mile corrosion protection, the best in the industry. It's a better time to buy or lease. See your Central Iowa Buick dealers for a test drive today.
This is your TV station, 5TV.
Look at the stories in the headlines over the past week. A huge controversy about advertising condoms on television. Heightened focus on the threat to heterosexuals from AIDS. The suggestion that all marriage applicants be tested for AIDS. All this against a death toll that now tops 17,000. Last week alone, 214 American men and women died of AIDS. About 250 more were told that they had the disease. Well, does this mean that you have to give up sex? As Lynn Shure tells us, you don't. And you don't have to become an AIDS statistic.
Well, we should talk about safe sex. Now, do you know what kind of sexual behavior is safe for you to practice?
Right now, I'm not even sure kissing is safe. Is it?
Yeah, maybe I just won't have sex at all. I don't know. It seems like a hassle, you know?
What we're going to share in the next few minutes is going to save your life. And it's going to save the life of somebody you love.
Right now, these messages being shown to students and healthcare professionals are our best hope for controlling the spread of AIDS. They are part of a massive public health campaign that is directed at each one of us, but is so far reaching only a limited audience.
If we can educate people, since it's basically a disease of consenting adults, and unfortunately possibly consenting teenagers too, we can stop the spread of this disease. What we have to do is put aside moralistic issues of whether you educate in the schools about this type of sexual activity, move away religious beliefs, and get to the heart of the issue. I mean, if you think about it, we're at war.
The chief battle tactic is called safe sex. Dr. Dooley Worth counsels women in safe sex practices.
And so anything that you do sexually, where you're exchanging blood with an infected person, or in any way that you take semen into your body, that can be through regular intercourse, through oral intercourse, through anal intercourse, puts you at risk.
That's why guys got to wear condoms, and girls got to make sure guys wear them to keep infected semen out of the body.
This video, commissioned by the New York City Board of Education and starring actress Rae Dawn Chong, is targeted at high school students, and it's been sold to school boards and health departments in 38 states.
I know you may feel like a jerk buying them or taking them out or putting them on, and you don't think it's romantic, and you feel a little embarrassed. And you figure the person you're going to have sex with won't like them. They're icky. But believe me, it's better to feel a little embarrassed than to risk getting a disease that could kill you.
The growing educational campaign, begun by a variety of private groups, has been only recently strengthened by U.S. government support.
The best protection against infection right now, barring abstinence, is the use of a condom.
There's more black people coming down with AIDS in Baltimore City than anywhere else in the whole country. So that's something to think about. That's the truth, yeah.
Okay.
In some cases, the advisors have real first-hand understanding of their audience. In a state-funded outreach program, former drug addicts have taken to the streets of one of Baltimore's toughest neighborhoods to hand out advice and condoms.
But here, why don't you take one of these so that you won't get AIDS?
I'm not going to get AIDS because I have a whole drawer of these.
Okay, well, that one you don't have to pay for. You already got it, and you can add it to your collection.
In Alexandria, Virginia, high school students are trying to convince their younger classmates of the urgency of the problem.
You can carry AIDS and not know it and not be affected from it. You won't personally die from AIDS. You yourself won't. But you'll be a carrier.
That's why we're stressing safe sex, and that's by using the condom or, of course, not having sex.
And adults are doing it too. At the Safe Sex Workshop offered by the Institute for the Advanced Study of Human Sexuality in San Francisco, one awkward question is timing.
realistically, in the course of a relationship in America today, when a man and woman meet, and when do you see bringing this up?
Start talking about health, and from there you can naturally start talking about safe sex.
You both enjoy health, and then maybe you're just sitting around having an iced tea after the game, and gosh, it's so neat to be healthy, and how do you like these condoms?
The last time there was a nationwide effort to change our sexual practices was more than 40 years ago. In an attempt to contain a venereal disease epidemic, the U.S. military tried to teach soldiers and sailors how to avoid infection. When it became clear, in the words of one doctor, that the Sex Act cannot be made unpopular, they turned to the same preventive measures we're hearing about today.
There'll be rubbers and chemical probe tubes available at sick bay and at the gangway, free.
I'll take care of myself.
Don't forget, put it on before you put it in.
Okay.
As you can see, during World War II, the government wasn't the least bit embarrassed about using explicit language in trying to keep the GIs healthy.
And you catch it only one way from a woman. Doesn't matter if she's a high school girl or a juke joint girl.
Don't forget, these training films were for men only.
I must have got it on the toilet seat, Doc. Now that's a hell of a place to take a girl. And you, did you use a rubber? No, Doc. She said she was married.
Today's health movie from the military has been viewed by 500,000 Army men and women.
I myself, I never used any precautions. I mean, maybe if I'd used condoms or something.
And while the message is the same, the film emphasizes that this time there is no penicillin to cure AIDS. That this time around, you can die of ignorance. The rediscovery of the condom has been a major marketing boon to an industry whose sales had been declining. Last year, Americans bought nearly 1 million condoms each day. And as new companies compete for their share of the booming market, the FDA insists they all meet voluntary standards of strength and durability. Today, condoms are no longer just for playboys. They're increasingly targeted at women buyers who are purchasing 40 to 50% of all condoms.
I never thought having an intimate relationship would be a matter of life or death. But because of AIDS, I'm afraid AIDS isn't just a gay disease, it's everybody's disease, and everybody who gets it dies. The Surgeon General says proper use of condoms can reduce your risk, so you'd be crazy not to use them. The condoms I buy are called lifestyles. I'll do a lot for love, but I'm not ready to die for it.
That commercial may be new to you because the TV networks won't run it nationally. But condom ads are being shown in an increasing number of local television stations. And in Europe, television boldly carries a variety of public health messages on AIDS.
Who are you sleeping with tonight?
I don't know.
Who did you sleep with last night?
I don't know.
Who slept with her last night?
I don't know.
How do you get AIDS?
I don't know.
It's not just gays who get AIDS, you know. Sleep around and you're at risk. If you must sleep with more than one partner, you must wear a condom. Because if you do get AIDS, what can the doctors do to save you?
I don't know.
Don't die of ignorance. Read the leaflet about AIDS now.
In Britain, a government-sponsored brochure about AIDS has been printed and posted to every resident.
We shall have to be very explicit, because I think that it's only when people realize the full enormity of the problem that is facing us that they will be prepared to have things coming through their letterbox which otherwise they would have found unusual.
Vær derfor kritisk ved valg av partner.
The danger of spreading is greatest through sexual contact. You should therefore...
No mistaking what the problem is with these unblushing Norwegian TV spots.
The danger of being infected is considerably reduced when a contraceptive is used. You should not have many sexual partners and ought to be particular in your choice of partner.
Det finns nämligen bara 2 sätt att skydda sig
And the Swedish commercials take you right into bed. The idea of sexual prophylactics is uncomfortable for many middle-aged Americans who haven't thought about condoms since they were 15. As it turns out, the situation for today's teenagers hasn't changed all that much.
The guys don't like using them. They ruin spontaneity. I mean, you can't just go into it. You have to, like, stop, and you have to take it out, and you have to put it on. And what does it take? 2 seconds to open up the package and put it on.
And what did your boyfriend think? Does he mind? Does he feel like, it's not, manly or macho or whatever?
He thought it was at first, and then he found out some of his friends used them. He didn't mind? No, he didn't mind.
That kind of frank advice characterizes the entire safe sex educational campaign. It's not who you are, but what you do that makes you vulnerable.
Let's say that a gay man has intercourse with a bisexual man. Now that gay man is infected, and he infects that bisexual man, who over a period of time has intercourse with a completely heterosexual young woman. And she becomes infected, and that young woman has intercourse with a young man, and that young man becomes infected. And you go on down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you say to yourself, how did this nice young Catholic girl get AIDS?
In other words, no body is immune, a point Dr. Mervyn Silverman, head of the nation's largest AIDS education group, has been trying to get across.
What do you say to the kid who says, well, I use my own judgment. I checked at the girl, and if she seems okay, I don't bother?
How you get across the fact that they may not have known who they were with. I mean, one of the ways you can think about it is when you go to bed with someone, you may possibly be going to bed with all the people they went to bed with before.
That is also the point made by these public service announcements, produced by a San Francisco TV station and offered free to other stations throughout the country.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. As a ball player, I had quite a reputation for moving in the fast lane. Now, as a husband, a father, and I hope a useful citizen, I'm worried about the spread of misinformation concerning AIDS.
Please take the time to find out the facts. AIDS is preventable, so a little knowledge will go a long way.
There is evidence that the effort to educate the public about how to avoid infection from AIDS is working. Here in San Francisco, a recent survey shows that almost every high school student knows how the disease is transmitted, and most understand that condoms can prevent its spread. That's due largely to a massive AIDS education program throughout the school district. And there are dramatic results. That kind of awareness may actually be saving lives among another large group here, the gay community.
I don't think there has ever been a change in behavior to the level that has taken place in many of the gay communities in this country. In San Francisco, for example, the rate of sexually transmitted diseases among gay men has dropped 90%. Not down to 90%, I'm talking about down to 10%, a 90% reduction.
There has also been a change among another sexually active group, men who patronize prostitutes. A group representing prostitutes' rights welcomes the progress.
A year ago, customers were refusing to use condoms still. 6 months ago, they began to be more willing to use them. And in the last few months, they've begun bringing their own. So there are differences.
When are you safe?
Obviously, if you've been mutually monogamous, and the word mutually is very important. It's not only you, but your partner have been monogamous for 5 or more years. But right now, we probably ought to say 6 or more years. You're safe.
And for those of you in a newer relationship who say,
this person's a good person, now I can take off the condom. That is really naive. The reality is, it gets to be fairly complicated, that it requires serologic testing at that point. And if you're both test negative, then the odds are that you're certainly not infected. There's a small chance at that point that you are incubating. So if you really want to be careful, you carry on with protected sex for another 3 months, 6 months, and retest again.
Well, I would say there are going to be some very interesting conversations in bedrooms from here on.
it is probably true that nervous laughter will always be heard when people talk about sex. What the experts are saying now is, go ahead, giggle, but change your behavior.
We're talking about death here. We're talking about death.
Yeah. It struck me, Lynn, at the frankness of your report.
should not be perceived as a further liberalizing of our sexual attitudes, but just the opposite, because it's highly conservative to save lives, and this may be what's necessary to save a lot of lives.
Well, indeed, but Hugh, we should also point out that there are some religious groups who do oppose the use of condoms at all, and they believe that abstinence is really the only solution. In any event, whatever method people choose, the experts are saying that this is not just temporary, that learning about safe sex is likely to be a major behavior change in our society because there's no cure for AIDS.
In your opinion, might it take the romance out of romance?
Well, that's what a lot of people are saying, and I guess one of the theories is that if people can learn to be comfortable speaking about these things, perhaps they'll be comfortable using them. In any event, consider the alternative.
Yeah. Thank you, Lynn. We'll be right back.
Introducing the Lisa McDougall copier, the Bill Stevens copier, the Tom DeLuca copier.
Sharp introduces the Z70, the compact copier you can call your own. It enlarges and reduces, copies in 5 different colors, works where you work, is easy to use and easy to maintain.
The John Eastwood copier.
The affordable Z70, one of the new Sharp copiers you can call your own.
An important message from American Airlines, introducing American Super Sale. From now through May 20th, with fares from only $19 to $99, you can fly to destinations throughout the continental U.S. $19 to $99 each way based on round-trip coach purchase. Just make your reservations 2 days in advance and stay over Saturday. Tickets are non-refundable. American Super Sale. You may never be able to go so far for so little again.
Stereo television. Once you hear how great it sounds on a Zenith, you'll think we invented it. We did. Zenith. Quality. Zenith's clean, cube-shaped styling gives you so much screen from side to side and corner to corner, it makes watching television a whole new ballgame. Zenith. Quality.
Right now, you can save big on Ford Ranger and Bronco 2 special value packages. And for a limited time, you can get 3.9% financing or $500 cash back on Ranger, $600 on Bronco 2. And if you have the cash back from Ford to option package discounts, you can save up to $2,165 on Bronco 2 and $1,811 on Ranger. Ford Ranger and Bronco 2. Build fun tough with value better than ever.
Saturday. I will not go back without my prisoner.
Fight for honor.
Honor cannot be given or taken. It must be earned.
Katmarita, Zuhara. Then the search for an unfaithful husband ends. Spencer for hire, right after O'Hara.
Saturday.
On the Disney Sunday Movie, discover the secrets of Captain Nemo's underwater world.
Secrets that are mine alone.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Sunday.
And now here's Ted Koppel with a word about tonight's Nightline. Ted?
Barbara, our focus tonight is the people in those refugee camps under siege in Beirut. Some reports say they've been reduced to eating dogs, cats, and rats to stay alive. We'll hear from eyewitnesses tonight. Hugh?
That's Nightline following your local news. Well, that's all the time we have, and that's 2020 for tonight. Thanks for being with us.
And remember, we're in touch, so you be in touch. I'm Barbara Walters.
And I'm Hugh Downs.
And for all of us here at 2020, good night.
Every Friday on World News Tonight, Peter Jennings profiles ABC's Person of the Week. Tune in to see who it will be.
For a transcript of this or any 2020 broadcast, please send $3 to 2020 Transcripts, 2 John Street, New York, New York, 10038. This has been the ABC News Magazine 2020.
Taking cocaine isn't cool. It's deadly. Don't do drugs.
Mount Everest, the ultimate climbing challenge. Follow a dramatic expedition to put the first American woman on the summit, plus the daring first ever hang gliding attempt from the mountain. It's the premiere of Mutual of Omaha's Spirit of Adventure on
2 Olympic medalists square off. Defeated Evander Holyfield defends his junior heavyweight crown against the last man.
Coming up on Iowa News tonight, the death of a newborn baby sparks an investigation in Lamoni. Iowa gets involved in developing a multi-state lotto game. The president calls for catastrophic illness insurance. Don says the mild weather is going to continue, and on sports, the Hawkeyes and the Boilermakers have a rematch. This and more next on the news.
Has it arrived in your home? The 16-page catalog from Homemakers East and Homemakers West. Look for the greatest furniture values you've ever seen. This sofa by Alan White is only $388. Real savings on Lazy Boy sofa sleepers. Brass and glass tables are only $99. It's all